The rain-soaked streets of Seattle gleamed under the streetlights, and I, Ethan Caldwell, 32, thought I had my life figured out until I saw them. I was sprinting through Pike Place Market, late for a client meeting, my tie flapping like a flag of surrender, when their laugh stopped me dead. It was a sound so bright, so alive, it cut through the city's gray hum like a blade. I turned, and there they were, Riley Harper, 29, leaning against a vendor's stall, their auburn hair catching the light like a halo. They were non-binary, I'd later learn, with a presence that seemed to pull the world into their orbit. Their eyes, hazel, sharp, and kind, met mine for a fleeting second, and I forgot how to breathe. I'd spent my whole life chasing predictable paths. A finance job, a tidy apartment, and a string of relationships with women that never quite clicked. But in that moment, something in me cracked open, and I didn't know whether to run toward it or away. "Lost?" Riley asked, their voice warm, teasing. They held a paper cup of coffee, steam curling into the chilly air. I stammered, my brain scrambling for words. "Just late," I managed, feeling like a teenager caught staring. They grinned, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Well, don't let me keep you, mystery man," they said, tossing me a playful wink before turning back to the vendor. I walked away, heart pounding, telling myself it was nothing, just a moment, just a stranger. But as I sat through my meeting, numbers blurring on my laptop screen, Riley's face lingered like a song I couldn't unhear. I'd always been the guy who followed the script. Good grades, good job, good life. Straight, predictable Ethan. So why did I feel like I just stumbled into a story I didn't know how to tell? That night I couldn't sleep. My Capitol Hill apartment felt too quiet. The city's hum outside my window a poor substitute for Riley's laugh. I replayed that moment at the market, dissecting it like a puzzle. I wasn't that guy. I dated women, nice women, like Sarah, who I'd broken up with 6 months ago because something was missing. I'd never questioned my sexuality, never needed to, but Riley, they were a question I couldn't answer. The next morning, I went back to the market. I told myself it was for coffee, but I scanned every stall, every face, hoping to see them. By some miracle, I did. They were at a flower stall, holding a bouquet of dahlias, their fingers brushing the petals with a tenderness that made my chest ache. I hovered nearby, pretending to inspect some apples, until they noticed me. "Stalking me now?" Riley asked, their grin disarming. I laughed, caught off guard. "Maybe I just like apples," I shot back, surprising myself with the ease of it. They raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "Sure, and I'm just here for the flowers." Their tone was light, but their eyes held mine, searching, and I felt exposed in a way I couldn't explain. We ended up walking together, weaving through the market's chaos. Riley talked about their job as a graphic designer, their love for Seattle's quirky art scene, and their dog, a scruffy mutt named Juno. I told them about my finance gig, how I secretly hated it, and how I'd always wanted to travel but never had the guts. It was easy, talking to them, like slipping into a favorite song. But every time their arm brushed mine, my pulse spiked, and I didn't know what to do with it. By the time we parted ways, I had their number. "Text me if you're ever not late," Riley said, their smile half challenging, half inviting. I walked home in a daze, my phone burning a hole in my pocket. I didn't text them that day, or the next. I was terrified, not of them, but of what they made me feel. I'd built my life on certainty, and Riley was anything but certain. A week later, I caved. My fingers shook as I typed, "Hey, it's Ethan. Wanna grab coffee?" Their reply came in minutes. "Took you long enough. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Lupanier." I stared at the message, my heart a mix of dread and thrill. This was just coffee, I told myself. Just two people hanging out. But deep down, I knew it was more. I was stepping off the edge of everything I'd ever known, and Riley was the reason why. The coffee shop was cozy, tucked into a corner of Pike Place with fogged-up windows and the smell of fresh pastries. Riley was already there, sprawled in a chair like they owned the place, their sketchbook open on the table. They wore a green flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up, and their hair was tied back, revealing the curve of their jaw. I felt underdressed in my button-up, like I was trying too hard to be someone I wasn't. "You're early," Riley said, looking up with a grin. "Didn't expect that from Mr. Late." I laughed, sliding into the seat across from them. "I'm full of surprises," I said, hoping I sounded smoother than I felt. We ordered coffee, black for me, a lavender latte for them, and fell into conversation like we'd known each other forever. They showed me their sketches, bold lines and vibrant colors that felt like an extension of their energy. I told them about my secret hobby, writing poetry I never showed anyone, and they leaned forward, eyes bright, demanding to read one. "No way," I said, my face heating up. "They're terrible." Riley smirked, leaning closer. "I bet they're not. Come on, Ethan. Let me see the real you." Their words hit harder than they should have. The real me? I wasn't sure who that was anymore. As the morning stretched on, I found myself watching them. The way their hands moved when they talked, the way their laugh crinkled their eyes. I'd never noticed details like that about anyone before. It was disorienting, like waking up in a new country without a map. When we left the shop, the rain had stopped, and the city felt alive, buzzing with possibility. Riley suggested a walk through Olympic Sculpture Park, and I agreed without hesitation. The park was quiet, the Puget Sound shimmering in the distance. We wandered past massive sculptures, their shapes strange and beautiful against the skyline. Riley stopped at a bench, pulling out their sketchbook again. "Draw with me," they said, handing me a pencil. I protested. I hadn't drawn since high school, but they insisted, their enthusiasm infectious. We sat side by side, sketching the same sculpture, our shoulders brushing. My lines were clumsy, but Riley's were alive, fluid, like they were pouring their soul onto the page. "You're not bad," they said, peering at my sketch. "For a finance guy." I laughed, nudging them gently. "And you're not bad for a chaotic artist." They grinned, their eyes locking with mine, and for a moment, the world fell away. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat tightened. Riley's hand rested on the bench, inches from mine, and I wondered what it would feel like to close that gap. That night, I lay awake, replaying every moment. I'd spent my life building walls, around my job, my relationships, my identity. Riley was tearing them down, and I didn't know if I was ready. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay away from them. Not now. Not ever. The weeks that followed felt like a fever dream. Riley and I fell into a rhythm, coffee dates, late-night walks, and long talks about everything and nothing. They'd text me random sketches or silly photos of Juno, their dog, and I'd find myself smiling at my phone like an idiot. I was still Ethan Caldwell, the guy with the corner office and the 5-year plan. But with Riley, I was someone else, someone freer, someone I barely recognized. One evening, we ended up at a queer open mic night in Fremont, a cozy venue lit by fairy lights. Riley had convinced me to come, claiming I'd love it. I was skeptical, crowds weren't my thing, and I felt out of place in the vibrant, eclectic space. But Riley was in their element, chatting with performers, their energy lighting up the room. They wore a leather jacket over a graphic tee, their hair loose and wild, and I couldn't stop staring. "You're quiet tonight," they said, sliding into the seat beside me with 2 beers. "Nervous?" I shrugged, taking a sip to hide my unease. Just new territory. Riley's eyes softened, like they saw right through me. You don't have to have it all figured out, Ethan. Just be here. Their words were simple, but they hit like a tidal wave. Be here. Could I do that? Could I let go of the need to control, to categorize, to understand? The open mic started, and performers took the stage. Poets, singers, comedians, all sharing stories of love, loss, and identity. One poet, a trans woman with a voice like thunder, read a piece about finding herself in a world that tried to erase her. I felt a lump in my throat, not just for her words, but for the way Riley's hand brushed mine under the table, grounding me. I'd never been to a place like this, never felt so seen and unseen at the same time. When Riley got up to perform, I held my breath. They read a poem about a phoenix rising from ashes, their voice steady but raw, each word heavy with meaning. The crowd snapped and cheered, but Riley's eyes found mine, and it felt like they were speaking to me alone. When they sat back down, I blurted, "That was incredible." They smiled, a little shy. "Thanks. It's about starting over. Finding who you are when the old you burns away." I wanted to ask what they meant, but the words stuck. Instead, I reached for their hand, my fingers trembling. Riley didn't pull away. They squeezed my hand gently, and we sat there, the world fading to a hum. For the first time, I didn't care what anyone thought. Not the crowd, not my colleagues, not even myself. I just wanted to hold on to this moment, to Riley. But the world doesn't let you stay in moments forever. A week later, I got a call from my older sister, Lauren, who lived in Tacoma. She was coming to Seattle for a visit, and she wanted to meet for dinner. "Bring someone if you're seeing anyone," she said, her tone teasing. I froze. Was I seeing Riley? We hadn't labeled it, hadn't even kissed. But the thought of introducing them to Lauren made my stomach churn. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't know how to explain what Riley was to me. I told Riley about the dinner, expecting them to laugh it off. Instead, they said, "I'd love to meet her, if you're okay with it." Their eyes were steady, but I saw a flicker of vulnerability, like they were waiting for me to pull back. I didn't. "Yeah," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's do it." Dinner was at a trendy gastropub in Belltown. Lauren, 35, was her usual self, warm, sharp, and a little nosy. She hugged Riley like they were old friends, and Riley matched her energy, trading stories about Seattle's quirks and their favorite dive bars. I watched them, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. Pride? Fear? Love? Lauren caught my eye and raised an eyebrow, her silent way of saying, "Whoa, Ethan, what's this?" After dinner, Lauren pulled me aside while Riley used the restroom. "So," she said, smirking, "they're amazing, and you're totally smitten." I flushed, looking away. "It's not I don't know what it is." Lauren's face softened. "You don't have to know. Just don't run from it. Okay?" I nodded, but her words echoed Riley's from the open mic. Be here. Why was it so hard? Later, Riley and I walked to their apartment in Queen Anne. The night was crisp, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement. "Your sister's cool," Riley said, their hands in their pockets. "She thinks we're a thing." I stopped walking, my heart racing. "Are we?" I asked, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Riley turned, their expression unreadable. "Do you want us to be?" they asked softly. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I wanted to say yes, to grab them and kiss them right there, but fear clawed at me. What did it mean to want Riley? To want someone who didn't fit into the neat boxes I'd built my life around? Riley stepped closer, their breath visible in the cold air. "Ethan," they said, their voice gentle but firm, "you don't have to have all the answers, but you have to be honest. With me, with yourself." I nodded, my throat tight. "I'm trying," I whispered. Riley smiled, small and sad, and squeezed my arm. I know. We stood there, the space between us electric, and I knew I was standing on the edge of something life-changing. I just wasn't sure if I had the courage to jump. The next few weeks were a tightrope walk. Riley and I kept seeing each other. Movies, hikes, late-night ramen runs, but the unspoken question hung between us. What were we? I wanted them in a way I'd never wanted anyone. But every time I got close to saying it, panic surged. I'd spent 32 years thinking I was one thing, straight, stable, predictable, and now Riley was unraveling that, stitch by stitch. One Saturday, they invited me to a queer art exhibit in Pioneer Square. The gallery was packed, walls lined with bold paintings and sculptures that screamed defiance and beauty. Riley moved through the crowd like they belonged, their energy magnetic. I felt like an outsider, hyper-aware of every glance, every touch. When Riley grabbed my hand to pull me toward a painting, a vibrant swirl of colors depicting two figures embracing, I froze. Their hand was warm, steady, but mine was clammy, unsure. You okay? Riley asked, their brow furrowing. I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, just a lot. They didn't push, but their eyes lingered, like they could see the storm in my head. The painting in front of us was raw, intimate, and I couldn't stop staring at the way the figures' lines blurred into each other, like they were one. Was that what I wanted with Riley? Could I let myself want that? After the exhibit, we walked to a nearby bar, a dive with sticky floors and neon signs. Riley ordered whiskey. I stuck with beer. We sat in a corner booth, the noise of the bar fading as they leaned closer. You've been quiet all night, they said, their voice soft. What's going on in that head of yours? I took a long sip, stalling. How could I explain the war inside me? The part that wanted to pull them close, and the part that was terrified of what it meant. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Riley's eyes softened, but they didn't look away. Maybe you're just figuring out who you've always been, they said. Their words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through me. I wanted to believe them, but doubt clung to me like damp clothes. What if I'm not enough? I asked, the words raw, exposed. For you. For this. Riley reached across the table, their hand covering mine. Ethan, you're enough just by being here, by trying. Their touch was an anchor, steadying me, but it also set my heart racing. I wanted to kiss them, to close the distance, but fear held me back. What if I wasn't ready? What if I hurt them? The moment passed, and we left the bar, walking through the cool night air. Riley's apartment was close, and when they invited me up, I said yes before I could overthink it. Their place was a reflection of them, colorful, chaotic, alive. Art supplies littered the table, and Juno, their dog, greeted us with a wagging tail. Riley poured us wine, and we sat on their couch, the space between us smaller than ever. Tell me something real, Riley said, their voice low, their eyes searching mine. I swallowed, my pulse loud in my ears. I'm scared, I said. I've never felt like this before, not with anyone, and it freaks me out because I don't know what it means. Riley's expression softened, and they set their wine glass down, scooting closer. It means you're human, Ethan. It means you're feeling something true. Their hand found mine again, and this time I didn't pull away. I leaned in, my heart pounding, and kissed them. It was tentative at first, like stepping onto thin ice, but then Riley kissed me back, and the world fell away. Their lips were soft, warm, and the kiss was a revelation. A spark that lit up every part of me I'd kept hidden. When we pulled apart, Riley's eyes were bright, their smile shaky. Took you long enough, they whispered. I laughed, the tension in my chest unraveling. But as we sat there, Tangled together on the couch, doubt crept back in. What did this mean for me? For us? I'd kissed women before, but this was different, deeper, truer. It wasn't just about Riley's gender. It was about them, their soul, their fire, and that scared me as much as it thrilled me. The next morning, I woke up on Riley's couch, their head resting on my chest. Juno was sprawled at our feet, snoring softly. The moment felt perfect, but my mind was already racing. I had a meeting with my boss later that day, a reminder of the life I'd built, the life that didn't know Riley, didn't know this version of me. How could I reconcile the two? At work, I was distracted, my thoughts drifting to Riley's laugh, their touch. My boss, a no-nonsense guy named Greg, noticed. "You okay, Caldwell?" he asked, his tone gruff but concerned. I nodded, forcing a smile. Just tired. But I wasn't tired. I was awake. More awake than I'd ever been, and it was terrifying. That night, I met Riley at a park near their place. They were sitting on a bench, sketching the sunset, their hair glowing in the fading light. I sat beside them, my heart heavy. "I don't know how to do this," I said, my voice breaking. "I want to be with you, but I'm scared of what it means. For me, for my life." Riley set their sketchbook down, their eyes steady. "Ethan, it's okay to be scared, but you can't let fear decide who you are." Their words hit hard, and I felt tears prick my eyes. I'd spent my life running from anything that felt too big, too messy. But Riley was worth it. They were worth everything. I took their hand, my voice steady for the first time. "I want to try. With you." Riley smiled, and in that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice, even if I didn't know where it would lead. Being with Riley was like learning a new language, beautiful, disorienting, and full of surprises. We were officially together now, though we hadn't defined it beyond that. Labels felt too small for what we had. We spent weekends exploring Seattle's hidden corners, secret beaches, hole-in-the-wall bookstores, and late-night jazz clubs. Riley's world was vibrant, chaotic, and I was falling deeper into it, into them. But the outside world wasn't as kind. At work, I started noticing sidelong glances when I mentioned Riley. I hadn't come out, not officially, but I didn't hide them either. I'd show up to meetings with a photo of us on my phone's lock screen, Riley's arm around me at a festival. My coworker, Mike, a guy I'd known for years, made a snide comment one day. "Didn't peg you for the artsy type, Caldwell." His tone wasn't playful, and it stung. I brushed it off, but it lingered, a reminder that not everyone would understand. Riley noticed my mood when we met for dinner that night at a taco truck in Fremont. "What's up?" they asked, their eyes narrowing as they handed me a taco. I hesitated, then told them about Mike. Riley's jaw tightened, but they kept their voice calm. People like that, they're just scared of what they don't get. "You don't owe them an explanation, Ethan." I nodded, but the weight of it stayed with me. I wasn't just navigating my feelings for Riley. I was navigating a world that didn't always make space for us. Things got harder when my parents called. They lived in Spokane, and we weren't close, but they wanted to visit. I hadn't told them about Riley, hadn't told them I was questioning everything I'd thought I was. The thought of introducing Riley to them made my stomach twist. My dad was a retired cop, gruff and traditional. My mom was kinder but followed his lead. How could I explain Riley? How could I explain myself? I told Riley about the visit over coffee one morning. They listened, their fingers tracing the rim of their mug. "You don't have to tell them anything you're not ready for," they said. "But if you want me there, I'm in." Their support was unwavering, but it only made my fear sharper. What if my parents rejected me? What if I lost them over this? The visit came faster than I wanted. My parents stayed at a hotel downtown, and we met for dinner at a steakhouse they loved. Riley came, dressed in a sharp blazer and jeans, their charm on full display. My mom warmed to them immediately, laughing at their stories about Juno. My dad was quieter, his eyes narrowing when Riley mentioned their art collective. "So you two are friends?" he asked, his tone heavy. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Riley's hand found mine under the table, steadying me. "More than that," I said, my voice shaking but clear. The table went silent. My mom's smile faltered. My dad's jaw tightened. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "you sure about this?" I wanted to shrink, to disappear, but Riley's hand anchored me. "Yeah," I said, meeting his eyes. "I'm sure." The rest of dinner was tense. My parents' questions clipped, their warmth gone. When we left, my mom hugged me, but it felt hollow. My dad just nodded. Outside, Riley pulled me into a hug. "You were brave," they whispered. I shook my head, tears burning. "I don't feel brave." Riley cupped my face, their eyes fierce. "You are. And I'm here. Okay?" I nodded, clinging to them, but the rift with my parents felt like a wound I couldn't close. The next day, I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the pain, but it followed me, heavy and unrelenting. Riley texted me a sketch, a simple drawing of two hands intertwined, with the words "You're enough" scrawled beside it. I stared at it, my chest aching. They were my anchor, but I was still adrift, caught between the man I'd been and the man I was becoming. That weekend, Riley took me to a queer community center in Capitol Hill. They volunteered there, teaching art to kids, and they wanted me to see it. The center was alive with laughter, music, and stories. People of all ages, identities, and backgrounds coming together. I watched Riley with the kids, their patience and joy infectious, and I felt something shift. This was their world, and they were inviting me into it. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like I belonged. But belonging came with a cost. At work, Mike's comments got worse, and I overheard whispers from other colleagues. My boss called me into his office one day, his expression neutral. "You're distracted, Ethan," he said. "Is something going on?" I wanted to tell him about Riley, about the joy and fear and chaos of it all, but I didn't. "Just personal stuff," I said, and he nodded, but I saw the doubt in his eyes. My job, my stability, my old life. It was slipping, and I didn't know how to hold on. That night, I went to Riley's apartment, my heart heavy. They opened the door, their smile fading when they saw my face. "What's wrong?" they asked, pulling me inside. I told them everything. My parents, work, the fear that I was losing myself. Riley listened, their hand on my knee, their presence steady. "You're not losing yourself," they said. "You're finding yourself. And it's hard, but it's worth it." I wanted to believe them, but the weight of it all was crushing me. I leaned into them, and they held me, their arms a safe haven in a world that felt like it was falling apart. The months that followed were a crucible. Riley and I grew closer, our lives intertwining like vines. We cooked dinners together, danced in their tiny kitchen, and spent lazy Sundays with Juno, dreaming about a future we hadn't dared name. But the world outside our bubble pushed back. My parents stopped calling. Work became a minefield of whispers and judgment. I was standing at a crossroads, and every choice felt like a loss. One evening, Riley took me to a queer film festival in Seattle's U District. The movie was about two men finding love in a small town, their story raw and real. I watched, my hand in Riley's, and felt a pang of recognition. Their struggles, their joy, it was ours too. After the film, we joined a Q&A with the director, a queer woman with a fierce passion for storytelling. Riley asked a question about representation, their voice clear and confident, and I felt a surge of pride. This was who they were, unapologetic, vibrant, true. But pride wasn't enough to shield us. At work, things came to a head. Mike cornered me in the break room, his voice low. "You're different, Caldwell. People are talking." I squared my shoulders, tired of hiding. "Good," I said. "Let them talk." His eyes narrowed, but I walked away, my heart pounding. That afternoon, my boss called me in again. "Ethan, you're a good worker, but you're slipping. Focus or we'll have to reevaluate your role." It wasn't a threat, but it felt like one. My job, my safety net, was fraying and I didn't know how to fix it. I told Riley that night, my voice shaking with frustration. They listened, their eyes steady. "Maybe it's not about fixing it," they said. "Maybe it's about building something new." Their words echoed in my mind, but I wasn't ready to let go of the life I'd built. Not yet. The breaking point came when my dad sent me an email. It was short, formal, like he was addressing a stranger. "We need to talk, Ethan. This isn't you." I stared at the words, my chest tight. I wanted to scream, to tell him he was wrong, but part of me wondered if he was right. Was this me? Could I be this person? Open, vulnerable, in love with someone who defied every expectation I'd ever had? I showed Riley the email, expecting them to be angry. Instead, they took my hand, their voice soft. "You don't have to prove anything to him, Ethan, or to anyone. You're enough." Their words broke something in me, and I cried, raw, ugly tears that I'd held back for months. Riley held me, their arms strong, their presence unwavering. "I love you," they whispered, and I froze. It was the first time either of us had said it. "I love you too," I said, the words spilling out like a dam breaking. That night we made love for the first time, our bodies and hearts laid bare. It was tender, fierce, and everything I'd been too afraid to want. In Riley's arms, I felt whole, like I'd finally found the missing piece of myself. But the world was still there, waiting to pull us apart. I decided to confront my parents. I drove to Spokane, Riley by my side, their hand on my knee as we crossed the mountains. My parents' house was the same as always, neat, predictable, a shrine to the life I'd left behind. The conversation was brutal. My dad's voice was cold, his words sharp. "You're throwing your life away, Ethan." My mom cried, saying she just wanted me to be happy. I told them about Riley, about how they made me feel alive, how I was finally myself. My dad walked out. My mom hugged me, but it wasn't enough to bridge the gap. On the drive back, I was silent, the weight of their rejection heavy. Riley didn't push, just held my hand, their presence a lifeline. "You did what you could," they said. "Now you get to live for you." I nodded, tears falling, and for the first time, I believed it. Back in Seattle, I made a choice. Quit my job. It was terrifying, but also freeing. I started writing again, poetry and stories I'd buried for years. Riley helped me submit to local zines, and when my first piece was published, they threw a party in their apartment, Juno wearing a tiny party hat. I looked around at the friends we'd made, queer artists, writers, dreamers, and realized I'd found a home. A year later, Riley and I stood on that same wooden bridge in the park where I'd first felt the spark between us. The leaves were falling again, golden and bright. I took their hand, my heart full. "I thought I was straight my whole life," I said, my voice steady. "Until you." Riley smiled, their eyes shining. "And I thought I'd never find someone who'd meet me where I am. But here you are." We kissed, the world fading to a hum, and I knew this was my truth. Not the life I'd planned, but the one I'd chosen. The one worth fighting for. The one that made me whole.